All right, boys. Here we are. First video episode.
Yes, sir.
This is it.
Well, we're doing our best with what we got, and we wanted to give the fans
AKA the iPhones.
what they've been asking for.
And our gym tripods.
We're gonna make it work with what we got, but first video episode, so for everybody to know, you could still go over to Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcast from to get the audio of this episode, just in case you don't like our faces. But I mean, who doesn't like this face right here? Oh, you got AI, ChatGPT is getting into it.
Jump in on the podcast right now.
So listen, that's it. AI is going to take over.
You guys can get the episode wherever you get your podcast from. And you can now head over to YouTube where this will be, and we're going to be doing this probably every other week so that we can get video episodes out for everyone to see our faces after almost 4 years of doing the podcast. Crazy, right? 4 years?
It's been a while.
It's a long time. You know, I heard a thing today. Most podcasts, 95% of podcasts, 5 episodes. That's it.
Really?
5 episodes. They don't get into the top whatever, top 100, top 150. They quit.
166.
And going.
So you're saying we're slow?
Well,
either we're just really stubborn.
No, we're good, man. We got good listenership. We got a lot of fans, and thank you to everybody who watched the Haunting in Brewster, New York. We're planning on actually going back, so we'll see how that goes. But until then, today we are actually getting off the conspiracies and off the ghosts and back on to Joey's favorite subject, and that is pyramids, Egypt, and that is a very hot topic.
We get 10,000 subscribers. We said it.
He's going. We're all going.
We're going to Egypt if we get 10,000 subscribers. We said it on a podcast.
Every time you guys bring this up, you do realize something happens in the news with flights. In the same day,
that's all right.
The Brazilian flight in Brazil, it just...
No, that was the doctors, though. You can't cure cancer.
Yeah, it was, and that's another thing. That's for an episode. Cancer doctors were on there.
I want you to know this is pretty heavy.
And
if I need to hit you with this.
And also, Trump's plane was diverted because there was a malfunction in his plane that they needed to land. So all on the same day. So if we get to 10,000 followers on Instagram, then I'll consider it. But there's a lot of stuff going on overseas right now.
I also want to point out 2 things, right? One, you said we're getting away from conspiracy, and I know when I get into Nick's notes, specifically about this topic that Joey is so well versed in, it's going to sound like conspiracy, at least to him. So that's number 1. And number 2 is you're worried about that conspiracy being away. I'm going to give you a new one. Who was on the Titanic?
I feel like
what families were on the Titanic?
The Strauss family.
The only 8 families that were against having it fed.
Well, I heard this was debunked. Was this debunked? I heard this was debunked.
No,
definitely wasn't.
So multiple families, including the Rockefellers, were supposed to be on it, didn't go on. That part may be debunkable, but the 8 families, the heads of those families, were all on the Titanic.
Interesting.
The same.
Ongoing conspiracies.
Planes.
But this is not
a good one to get
But this is not such a conspiracy, so I'm going to do a nice...
You know what's wild about the Titanic? Not to deviate from the topic that we have today. There's a book called The Titan, and it's the exact same premise of how it played out a few years later. Like, I never read the book, but apparently the
book came out and then Titanic happened.
Exactly. And the ship in the book is the Titan.
Not to sound
so crazy.
Not to sound more
I don't know if it's called the Titan, but I gotta look that up.
Didn't the book come out like the same day that stuff had happened in Hawaii? Like the same day, like the book was out by some doctor on how it could happen, and then it happened?
Or like 2 weeks into the pandemic, there was a movie about a pandemic.
Oh. Let's get away from those topics right now. I think
there's some good ones out there for sure.
Was there a book written about how the Egyptians built the pyramids while they were building it? Or after it was constructed?
Well, I mean, when I get into one of my little topics, I'm sure Joey will jump on. He'll really want to jump to it. I think that there's a hell of a lot we don't know. Okay, a heck of a lot that we don't know.
Well, let's fill everybody in as we pop up the article. So basically, CNN and other news outlets, according to archaeologists, they concluded in the last week and a half since the article was published that Egyptians used hydraulics, possibly, to build the pyramids in Egypt. Now, I read the article a little bit. It also included things with water, right? And that's their theory of the hydraulics.
Yep.
So when we think about hydraulics now, we think about skid steers and excavators. Everything in those trucks and rigs are made with hydraulic lines to lift things that are very heavy in the tons and the hundreds of pounds. So, without further ado, the first video segment, all made possible because of Spotify for Podcasters. If you haven't heard about Spotify for Podcasters, it is the free app that allows you to get a podcast idea
out there.
There you go. That was a good time, man. We're prepped for this somehow.
Oh,
so
we were a little rusty last week.
I put the picture up. You guys can go download if you guys have a podcast idea. Obviously, also integrated with Riverside, which lets you do video podcasts, but a very sophisticated way. So if you guys want to do video podcasts, unlike the way we're doing it right now, which is all up here, and because of mushrooms. You could take a look at Riverside.
Neither do I.
Riverside.
He's
I'm
talking
not
about
Aaron
Lime's
Rodgers.
name.
Riverside and Spotify for Podcasters are working
Forceps.
together in the last month and a half. But take it away with Nick's notes.
All right. So here we go. So we did a new theory. This new theory. Let's talk about the old theories first. Pyramid schemes, right? Legitimately, human strength, poles, ramps. That's how we did it.
Not possible.
Right. So it's easier to digest when we talk about Middle and New Kingdoms in 1980 to 1075 BC when they were very, very small structures. They weren't as wide. They weren't as tall. You could go up maybe as high. And the stones did not weigh as much. However, we have always struggled to combine this theory with the Old Kingdom, 2675, and I'm going to say allegedly here, timeline-wise, because we're going to get to that. And Joey, I know you're going to love this part. By the way, I never tell them what's in my notes until we get going.
It's a mystery.
It is, and it's fun.
It's like Christmas morning, every day.
Opening a Christmas cracker, which Billy now knows is not an actual.
It's not edible.
Okay, so we always struggle to combine this with the Old Kingdom, right? Structures that were much larger. Let's talk about the step pyramid of Pharaoh Dozier.
Mm-hmm. Gozer?
Not Gozer. Not Gozer. Dozier. Pyramid, which is 204 feet tall.
Dozier cat?
Close. It's close to spelling. It's Djoser.
Oh.
All right. Now, if you read the article, you see a lot of this is me picking apart the article and then adding in some of my own context. Because I wanted to stick to just the article for today. I know Joey's got the expertise. I don't have to go too deep into the topic this time around. Now, Egyptologists to this day, can't say his name. I know everybody loves his name on this one.
Oh, Zahir Wash?
Zahir Wash. I know you love to say his name. To this day, they're debating how the pyramids went up. Okay, to this day. Now, here comes this new theory by Dr. Xavier Landau and his company, Paleotechnic, which is based out of Paris. Okay, they're the company that posited this theory. They're the company that put this out. Their scientists are the ones that came up with it. The theory is water-powered elevator with an internal vertical shaft inside the step pyramid is how they started to push up the stones from the base, because it originally started as just a rectangular structure, and then to build it higher and higher and higher, they used a vertical shaft. Okay? Stones on some kind of float. Now, I had some questions when I'm reading this. I go, all right, well, what kind of float could hold 660 pounds? Because some of these stones weighed 661 pounds, or, for our international listeners, 300 kilograms. All right? So how could you get a float that's going to hold something that big if humans couldn't do it with pulleys and straps and things of that nature and ramps, okay? Because if we couldn't build a ramp to hold it, what's building a float that's going to hold it that long, right? Mm-hmm. And then how could you create enough pressure to lift? Now, I know we're going to talk about hydraulics, and I'm going to explain how hydraulics work a little bit later, but the best way I can give you to picture this, there's two examples. I can say... I don't know if we can say this one on YouTube. Can we say this one on YouTube without getting in trouble?
Well, let's check it out.
I don't want to get called for like a weapons thing.
No, bullet and no, you could say it because it's in the context of learning. Because I actually read the guidelines.
Okay, so the pneumatics of basically a gun. The bullet is in the chamber, and the pressure of the air around the bullet plus the cocking mechanism itself.
You said cocking.
This is what I'm dealing with.
And then the video ends.
Shadow Man for the next 6 months. All right. So basically, the bullet firing out of the chamber.
Right.
Or if you want to picture it, a very good visual. You've seen it. Probably almost everybody in our audience. I don't know how old they are. They've seen one variation of Willy Wonka, whether it be the original with Gene Wilder or the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with Johnny Depp. When Augustus Gloop gets caught in the tube, the pressure builds up and pressure builds up and pressure builds up until poof, he shoots up. That's kind of how they're describing this hydraulic vertical shaft. Like it's going to shoot, the pressure is going to shoot it up and lift it up to where it needs to be, to its given level that they need to take it off, and then as they go higher and higher, continue to increase the size of the shaft up until they get to the tip of the pyramid. Okay? Surprised you didn't jump on all of that commentary.
No.
Okay. So, now, the climates in the desert were savanna-like back then, with tons of rainfall. Now, to say this wrong...
Is that what they said? Because now that's a conflicting theory to what I heard. I heard that
I will tell you when it ended.
I heard it was more tropical at the times they were building the pyramid.
I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
So, Gizir El Mudir, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, so I apologize if I'm...
We apologize to
our mispronunciation.
To our Egyptian crowd.
But it's Gisr, so there's no vowel in there, so Gizir.
Gisr?
Yeah. El Mudir, that part I'm pretty sure I've got, would have acted as a dam for storage and filtration, so it would have held back all the silt and the rocks and stuff, and would have let clean water come in. Gisr.
No vowels.
The only one is the I in the beginning, so
Mushroom.
Gizir. Now, this information, the fact that this El Mudir location could have acted as a dam for storage and filtration, has been verified. And in the article, they talk about a Dr. Judith Bunbury from. She works in a location out of London. Did not work with the team. Did not work on the project, but verifies that this could have been something that could have happened, could have existed, could have been used. Okay. There's also this concept of a dry moat. So, like if you've ever seen a castle, right, in old medieval times, they have the moats around them. That's to help protect. Well, there's a dry moat around this pyramid. There's a giant channel surrounding the step pyramid with no water, obviously, because it's a desert. They say maybe that used to be a giant river-like structure or water-like structure that could have flown water or had water flow go through. All right? But here's the big problem, and you brought it up, and I'm going to touch on it again. Timeline. Many experts say that the rainfall would have ceased hundreds of years before the build. If the build is in 2600s to 2100s BC, the rainfall is supposed to have stopped at 3000 or before. Now, Joey, I know you're going to like this. Maybe we have the time frame wrong on Egypt and the pyramids and all the builders.
1000%.
I'll stop for a second if you want to jump in and
and speak nice and loud for our crew.
That's the theory of. Well, there's a few prevailing theories, but I like Graham Hancock's work, and I know a lot of people think he's like this pseudo architect or archaeologist rather, but the guy's been in the field for decades and has studied every piece of ancient history when it comes to Egypt. He knows his shit. He knows all the numerology and all the metrics that have to do with the pyramids. He'll sit there and he'll spout them one after the other and just make you aware of the sheer size and magnitude of this construction. It wasn't a construction to be taken lightly, like, oh, we looked at it and like, oh, they placed some blocks on top of one another, what's the big deal? Like, it doesn't look like anything that we have today. But the big deal is like each stone is 2.5 tons and 1 ton is 2,000 pounds. So do the math on each stone. And these aren't the heaviest.
Now you're talking about Giza, right?
Giza.
Not the step pyramid.
No, not the
step pyramid was only about 600 pounds. So just so we're clear, guys, same concept. Huge stones. Our machines now can lift what, 50 tons? If we're like not 50 tons. I'm sorry. What can they lift?
We're up there. I know that through leverage. So the oldest, we're jumping ahead, but I'll jump around. So let me pull this up real quick.
Sorry, I cut you off, but I wanted to make sure people were listening.
The heaviest stone ever, the Thunderstone, was the heaviest stone ever moved by modern society. I think it was the Bronze Age, right? And this stone had to be cut down from its original size. It was cut down in weight to about 1,500 tons and was transported in the 18th century using a combined human labor of modern technology, pulley systems, whatever have you.
And it was going downhill.
They didn't move it very far. They got it to a port. They put it on a ship. It was thousands of people working on this one stone to move it as far as they did. And then now it's like sitting who knows where with the bronze horse on it. But nonetheless, like an amazing feat for its time. So I'm not debating whether like we had the ingenuity to do it in the 1800s, but this is a civilization that came out of fucking nowhere where essentially nothing else is supposed to exist, right? The guys that moved the Thunderstone was in the 18th century. We're talking about thousands of years later. You know what 1,000 years is? I don't think people grasp.
That's 4,000 years. You're talking about somewhere in the range of about 4,000 years.
About 4,000 years later.
For us, because technology has moved so fast, people
imagine what we could do in 4,000 years if we ever get there. You know what I mean? Like
technology is always right. Double power, half time. So as we build, when we had computers, double power, half time. We got portable computers, not these big things that had to be stuck on giant walls. Like this whole room would have been a computer room, right? Just one computer. Then we got these home computers. Then we got laptops. Then we have tablets and phones. That these phones have more power in them than any of those old computers ever did, and they're 7 inches big. Mm-hmm. Okay, so double power, half time. But if we start going backwards, that is before the industrial age. That's before we had machinery. All right, the most machinery we did have, and I'm not saying technology is not technology, because a pen is technically technology, a pencil is technology, right. But the biggest machinery we had was a pulley system with ramps and human hands.
Right. And I'm not talking like, I'm not sitting here saying that human beings didn't complete this task on their own. What I am saying is that I think that there's a lost technology at play. There's no doubt that there's some kind of lost history that we know nothing of, that we may have been advanced. And I mean, not as advanced as we are now.
I gotta chime in. The pyramids of Giza, there's 3 of them, one being bigger than the other 2.
Yeah, there's
all of those stones were a ton or more, or a little less, slightly less.
There's so, and even inside,
so you're talking about
there's ones that are 100 tons on the inside, that are like stacked like a little house, and then they have, to get the math right, there's shafts within the pyramid, and if your math is off by just a little bit, like this is a society that came out of nowhere with precise geometry that probably takes like hundreds and hundreds of years to evolve. Right. You know, there's no school systems that we knew of back then. Like, what was their educational system?
Right,
like?
The rich and the people who had access to the scrolls, and that's about it.
But
not everyone.
If you think about what Europe was doing 5,000 years ago, Europe was like in teepees and huts 5,000 years, like hunter-gatherers. There was no technology in Europe at that time.
Before you forget your point, I just said...
So that was my point about the pyramids being... I mean...
Is it lost, or was it hidden?
The Giza pyramids, 3 of them. One being the biggest.
Khufu's.
Thousands of stones to construct it, which archaeologists and scientists say took them estimated 20 years to build. Right? 3 of them. No machinery. Modern day...
No machinery like now.
Yeah, no modern day hydraulics. Their water hydraulic theory...
Right.
But not what we have.
I'm not saying that that's how it wasn't done. That may have been indeed how it was.
And I'll get to that. I will. I
promise. I
promise.
think that when they say things like that, they underestimate the amount of sheer manpower and...
That's why I ask, is this lost technology or is it hidden?
Oh, it's lost. And I think...
Well, lost on accident or lost intentionally?
See, I think it might be hidden too, because there is a reason that Zahi Wash doesn't want people or camera crews.
That's why I know you wanted to get away from conspiracy.
Going down certain parts of the pyramid, and
they won't shove a camera down the head of, and we know that there's tunnelage there, like in the Sphinx.
Yeah. I don't think that's the original head. I think that's a head from a different structure.
That's what they say.
That's another theory.
It doesn't match up.
It doesn't match up.
And this is how you know that there are newer kingdoms that I think that they found Egypt. There was a catastrophe, the Great Flood, the Younger Dryas theory impact, right? I think that what he says is spot on. There's evidence of the erosion around the Sphinx to support
Could be Troy,
it.
could be Atlantis. I mean, there's so many things that we have in our history.
The Sphinx is 10,000 years old. So 5,000 years before the pyramids is what they're saying. The only reason why they're guesstimating that is because the erosion.
Right.
They may have been actually built simultaneously side by side. Who knows?
Right.
But you're talking about generations and generations and generations separating, maybe like 5-7 generations separating the construction of these sites. So that kind of doesn't make sense to me. What makes more sense is that
50
after
generations. You're talking about thousands of years.
Right, thousands of years. So what makes more sense to me is that there was an impact, a flood, some kind of catastrophe. Technology was lost. The original kingdom that built those great monuments is no longer here, right? And now here comes the dynasties. They roll in, they take Egypt over for themselves, and there's littered evidence of all over the place that there's these... It doesn't match up. So some of the granite carvings, like we covered...
Seraphim of Saqqara.
Seraphim of Saqqara. And those are granite boxes. Those are diorite granite boxes. And if you know anything about stone... On the Mohs scale, diorite is the second hardest stone next to diamond. Now these boxes are precisely cut, smooth as a baby's bottom.
So they had diamond saws and diamond blades.
But not just that. I think what's most interesting...
Well, you needed that to cut that. The way that they found it,
there's only two
archaeologists...
things that cut something on 9 on a Mohs scale.
There's
another
no
9 or a 10.
There's no way.
So they have had to have diamond tip tools moving at a very fast pace, like a saw, to really get in there and cut those precise edges.
Isn't this the thing, like, you can't even slip a playing card in?
You can't. But not only that, on the inside of the box, so they've opened the lids, right? And on the inside of the box, the dimensions are perfect right angles. It's just completely...
It's like they had
out.
speed squares, and they can go to the angle, and it's all square. Everything is square. Nothing is off, and I'll just throw one in there. For what I do at work, I cut steel, stainless steel, all types of metal. It takes me, with a grinder and a cutting wheel, a while just to cut metal or try to shape things. Imagine diorite, and imagine with the tools on the historical timeline
that they said
that they did it with. And then Seraphim of Saqqara, there was 8 boxes that supposedly housed Egyptians' bull, as like their bull that they had at the time there.
So, like, that's my point, right? Like, we could talk about multiple points in history or multiple mythical, right? This is mythical in air quotes, because I want to believe that these things exist. Atlantis, Troy. Like, you can find proof of certain civilizations around those times. And the fact is, we have these things that modern machinery can't mimic. Tell me why. Why are we so far behind the curve when we did this thousands of years ago and no one could figure out how to repeat it? We're not that stupid as a people. We're not that stupid as a species. Okay? There are dumb people. There are dumb persons. I'm not going to discount that. But there is no way that there isn't enough brain power, especially now with the advent of AI, to figure out how to mimic these things. And yes, I know AI is young, but we could start throwing in... I could put in inputs into AI and make stuff happen, and I'm terrible with AI. Like, I am a neophyte with AI. But I wanted to stop there and give you time. Did you... That
hydraulic system that you talked about, I wanted to touch on.
All right, when we get there.
Like, so it's going up a shaft, up the side of this curved pyramid, using who knows how much water. Hundreds of thousands of gallons of water, right? You're forcing it up the shaft with these floaties on this rock. What happens when a floaty breaks?
Right. So
you know what I mean? There's so much margin for error there.
And how are you getting the water force to force the water?
That's another question.
Up the shaft,
especially given the timeline, right? Given the time, I'm going to jump back into the notes and we can go back and play and forth. Given the timeline, there's not enough water. There's
a good video of it on YouTube. I think we're going to link it in the bio. I'll send it to you so people can watch and see this new theory. They put it out a while ago. I'm surprised this is making news now. When you sent it to me, I was like, This is weird that they're like making this news now, but this theory's been out for quite a while with this water and hydraulics and using the Nile to really push the stones down.
Well, they actually touch on this in this article. So this is not directly the Nile. They've talked about how the Nile's been touched on before to be used for water hydraulics, but this particular examination is more about the shaft itself and using that with a hydraulic system, as if that's the pneumatic tube that, if you think about like the trains now or the Augustus Gloop, right? This is the tube. They couldn't figure out why it was working. This shaft was only like a dedicated shaft, and I'll talk to you about why there's these shafts in these pyramids. But this shaft had other purposes, and they never thought to say, well, hey, maybe this shaft was used for that purpose, and it wasn't the Nile. It was these water sources. But as we said,
it's still so ingenious that like, why isn't the rest of the world thinking like this at that time period? Why is it just this select group of people in this one location that did it for 5,000 years? And by the way, the pyramids are still the heaviest structure ever created by mankind, and it's already 5,000 years. We still haven't made anything to the sheer magnitude and size of what the Great Pyramid is. No. That's insane when you think about it.
That is insane.
Right, we've built things higher. We may have built... No, I don't think we've built anything that weighs more, but we've definitely built higher, but never with the same kind of craft.
Didn't the Eiffel Tower beat the pyramid structures?
I think there's
or
so
something
many,
like
there's
that?
so many buildings.
In height,
So, like,
yeah.
That was the first... The Eiffel Tower was the first structure in 5,000 years to be taller.
But it's empty metal. Honestly. No, there are spaces... I've been in the Eiffel Tower. There's spaces in the tower, obviously. But, like, think about how the tower is, right? It's all that empty archway underneath. You have layers where it's, like, constructed like an erector set, where there's empty space. Where's all that empty space in a pyramid? Don't tell me just in the middle, because you'd have to go in to see that it's really not as empty as people think it is.
They've already done the LiDAR. They know it's not empty. They know that these are like...
There's something there.
Right.
Millions of blocks.
So, let's go back to some... Go ahead.
What was the other fact? They had to lay one stone every 5 minutes for something like 5 to 20 years. They don't know exactly how...
To get everything done properly.
To get everything done on time. You know how insane that sounds? These guys were working around the clock.
No union
Sorry,
breaks.
wait, repeat
No
that.
union breaks.
Repeat the math.
So it's
Every 5 minutes.
2.5 tons of stone. Each stone about 2.5 tons. Some of them more, right? And they have to lay these stones every 5 minutes precisely with no margin for error. Like these are. So you're telling me you have mathematicians that are working up in these chambers round the clock? It just makes no sense to me. Like,
forget the mathematicians.
And the
math is done. It's done.
And the weight
you still have to.
You adjust.
You
Right. You have to adjust.
and the weight of these things to
But the
lay
people moving.
each
Right.
thing down per 5 minutes.
Right.
At that weight.
And then to make sure it's scraped
No.
right on the top and on the
But
sides
then
to match
what
the
I'm
next
saying
piece.
is there's no breaks. This is done through the night. Where's the light source?
No, I'll tell you this.
You know what I mean?
In the desert,
Where's the light source?
the only source of light in the desert would be the moon.
Well, okay, fine. Ra and Khonshu. Okay.
Surprisingly, the moon does illuminate on a full moon. Does illuminate pretty well, and there's, mind you, it's the desert.
Yeah, but
if the timeline
it wasn't as desert as it is now. So you're not going to get the same kind of illumination.
Right, but I don't think it was vast forest as some say, tropical forest, because it would be
At
tropical.
the time of the building, they're saying
What
it was
happens
more-
when the dark side of the moon is facing us? Not that it changes. But
Well,
what I
you mean when
is
we're not getting the reflection.
When the sun is behind the moon.
Right, because we never see the dark side of the moon. Technically.
The dark side is a path to things that are unnatural.
All right, if you mention her name right now, we're definitely getting...
I'm not. I'm just mentioning
Because they just had a great convention. They
Palpatine.
mentioned a whole bunch of things at
Yes.
the convention.
But finish Nick's notes so we can chit-chat.
So Dr. Fabian Wilk, he's from Poland. He argues that the water coming in at that point wouldn't be, obviously with the timeline, wouldn't have enough. And the fact is limestone, which is what a lot of this is built out of, the water would naturally escape from. So it wouldn't help. Like the limestone would actually counteract all this water that they're using.
And wasn't the limestone thousands of miles away? Or like not thousands, but it was like...
They had to take it a long time.
It was like 500 miles away or something like that.
Like how long?
How much water did you have?
Exactly.
Well, obviously, according to the timeline, the savanna-like conditions don't exist. But they said maybe flash floods. You know how I feel about maybe. Okay? Yeah, right. So, now let's talk about getting a shaft. I've wrote a lot of funny titles for this.
Getting the shaft.
Getting the shaft. What was the vertical shaft for? Well, it's connected to another shaft outside. So was it for the water? This is why I think your theory about the Nile, right? They've talked about this before. Was it for the water? Well, no, that's not what they thought. Originally, even the burial chamber was actually maybe not a burial chamber, but it was actually a valve. It was used to open and close, right? But most people thought that these shafts in these pyramids were for ventilation, for light as they were building, or even to relieve pressure on chambers underneath, because obviously you're putting more and more weight. You got to put these things. However, proof does exist that ramps and pulleys were there, and people will want to go with the simplest explanation. That's just human nature. You want the simplest explanation because that's what you're accustomed to. So people really, they're fighting this theory, one, because there isn't a ton of proof. Two, because they have so much proof the other way. And by so much, I don't mean it's a lot, but enough that they've grown accustomed to it. And when you get into a habit of something or accustomed to something, you're going to fall back to that 9 times out of 10.
Right.
Right? And you think about it even in fitness or any kind of field. Like, if I don't have my shoes right by my bed before I go to bed, and then I get up to go to the gym, and my shoes aren't there, I'm going to use that as an excuse not to go to the gym, right? You've heard that, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. That goes to anything, and this including this theory of the pyramids. So, if the shaft was used, if it was used for water, what would help prove that would be when they find other shafts that have so far not been found in these pyramids that would show kind of that structure, like a piping structure. I don't mean for actual like indoor plumbing kind of piping, but just a piping structure that would show that these pipes were used or these shafts were used to actually float objects or move them by hydraulic, then they would have a lot more proof and another leg to stand on. That's where they really come at it. Now, real quick, I'll just go over layman's terms about how hydraulics work, what they really are. It's technical and applied science. It's an engineering, chemistry, and other sciences where you have 5 basic elements in most hydraulic components. You have a reservoir, a pump, control valves, a motor of some kind, and actuators. The pump will push fluid from the reservoir through the system with valves opening and closing to control direction, amount, and velocity of water. Yes, if you have them all open and you're all shooting the same way, it's going to get much faster as it goes down a shaft, as opposed to as you open and close in slow increments, like a dam works, because that will slow down the water. It will still go in the direction you want, it will still be an amount that you want, but you can also change the speed.
So food for thought, if you want a +1 to the family, open all the valves.
Okay.
Okay?
Got it.
Okay.
Pascal's law is my last note here. Okay, Pascal's law in easy terms. If pressure is applied to a fluid in a hose, a tube, or a pipe, it will transmit a force acting at a small area and generate a proportionally bigger force on a larger area, such as a piston. The piston will then move because of all the pressure around it, right? Just the Augustus Gloop, all the pressure underneath him moves him, right? And moving that needed a lot more force, but because you have all that water in there, that you've opened up valves, you brought in water, you churned it, you've turned it from water energy to motor energy, you force the pressure up. So think of, a good way to think of it is, not that you should do it, but if you've ever seen somebody with a magnifying glass in a cartoon with ants, you can force all the sunlight into a small beam, which will then burn, right? Same kind of principle applies to pressure. If you force enough water into a small location with enough pressure behind that water, because you've directed the direction and the velocity.
I've tried the magnifying glass thing on ants before as a kid, but for some reason it didn't work on the blue ants. No?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right.
I think I'm done.
Are you done with mixed notes?
I'm done with mixed notes. That's it. That was more the Pascal's
Listen,
law was
I got to tell you something. We had Mike, who is been known on TikTok many names now. History Light with Mike, the Angry History Geek, and Joey and Mike had a really good debate, really good episode where Mike gave his science and Joe gave his pseudoscience, and they came to the table. And actually, there was no arguments.
Well, that's why I brought up the lost versus hidden, because I remember if I listened to that right, like, Mike was talking about how those tools were just magically missing, right? Wasn't that his thing?
No, Joey, our sound guy, said that the tools were missing because people would steal the tools and they wanted it, and then the culture didn't get the points for doing it.
Right.
And I kind of the tools would still be somewhere
in the world, like
for finding.
Like we found the Dead Sea Scrolls. We found there is in Egypt
There are artifacts found, by the way. There's a guy on YouTube. His YouTube channel is Bright Insight, and he's been to Giza a lot. And there are artifacts that are found that they don't know what they were for. They don't know what they did, and it's possible that they were part of some technological device to maybe move larger stones.
What's funny is, and it's kind of long in the tooth now, the franchise, but Assassin's Creed started on a premise just like that. I mean, they found an apple, right, a piece of Eden that they found in the desert, and they took that, and then they realized that was, I mean, in the game, if you don't know the original game, I mean, it's over 20 years, so it's like alien tech, and, Adam and Eve were like people who escaped from the factory with this piece, and that's why they're the first humans who took the fruit of the god, right? I mean, yeah, there's got to be things. Just like I said before, there are unexplained things.
What I was going to say is things eventually will be found somewhere in the world, and they'll be able to be like, well, this particular piece of wood is indigenous to this side of the world. How did it end up there? I can't really run on Joey's theory, our sound guy.
Not this Joey.
Not this Joey. Joe. He goes by Joey. That the Egyptians were robbed of their stuff that they used to build these astronomical foundations and buildings that are so hard that even if you pull up Google, and I'll have it pop up, how the pyramids were built, it says there's still debate. There's no solid answer. You could listen to your scientists and you can listen to our scientists. There are theories on how these things were built. There are videos of excavators.
What makes most sense, but then there's still so many logistics involved that you're like, even the stuff that makes most sense starts to collapse. And Graham Hancock said that if anybody, he's like, says that they know that the pyramids were built, they're just out of their minds. They don't know what they're talking about. And then he just starts spewing the facts, like it's built true north, like within a degree of true north, and maybe it was exactly precise because the Earth's tilt has changed.
Especially if it's older than we think it is.
Right. And the precision that would have had to been involved to align a structure. First of all, why would you even align a structure to true north? I know that they used, astronomy and they used the stars to kind of mimic what they're creating.
I only have one theory on that, and the reason that it was true north is whatever Egyptians were traveling knew that if they saw that pyramid in the horizon, that's north. Go north to that pyramid.
Right.
But then again, the pyramids were also built for the pharaohs,
if they're burying the pharaohs and their gods.
Nobody was buried there.
Right. So if they're burying their gods, where would you bury it? The North Star.
Maybe they weren't burying it. Maybe they didn't mean to bury any gods there. Maybe they built it for
as a way to communicate back to heaven.
Back to the gods. Like, hey, come back.
There is a pretty decent prevailing theory. So, like, there's a fact, like, inside the chambers of the pyramids of Giza, there's no soot findings on the walls. And we obviously know that there was no such thing as, controlled electricity back then, so they didn't have light, they didn't have sources of light. So in these shafts, it's completely pitch black. If not for the illumination of modern, we wouldn't even really be able to navigate.
It'd be like going into a dark cave.
Exactly. So
this is a Billy Carson theory. They were conductors. They were somehow conducting electricity.
And there is evidence on the walls of certain chemicals, and it suggests that they were somehow using it as a hydrogen plant. What are they using the hydrogen for and to power what? I don't know. But something to do with that being a power plant to create massive amounts of crops and food for civilization.
The Ark of the Covenant theory.
Right.
Well, Billy Carson also touched on that.
There's a box inside the Great Pyramid of Giza.
He actually said, Billy Carson's a very intelligent Billy, unlike this Billy. But what he did say is that there was multiple Ark of Covenants, and that the Ark of the Covenant was a power source.
Right, and isn't this box that you're talking about, it fits exactly with, if we go to the biblical dimensions of where you're supposed to
Yes, it equates to the biblical, the guidelines.
King's chamber matches up.
The blueprints of the Ark of the Covenant that God gave.
Right, the cubics and stuff.
It's all, it was in cubics, which is very hard to, when I did the episode without you guys years ago, I had to, try to compute what a cubics was in modern time, which there is
Conversion chart.
But there's also a life-size replica of Noah's Ark somewhere in the United States, built to size. It's huge, not big enough to get every animal in the world on there.
Right.
And there's a theory about that the animals, the male and female animals going on to the boat, wasn't the actual animals. It was the DNA of the animals.
Makes more sense.
Which makes more sense because
Then you can fit
you're
it.
not going to fit the entire animal.
Now we're talking about a civilization that does have technology. I'm inclined to believe that.
You're
The
talking
reason-
about a Jurassic Park kind of a situation.
Pretty much, but thousands of years ago.
Right.
Which is, if that is true, again, this is just a theory that I think I heard on Ancient Aliens. That
Man,
who knew that at the time to take blood and throw it on a boat.
Forget knowing to take the blood. What device are they using to re-implement that into,
right? There's got to be
creature?
They have to have a lab.
I mean, think about that's like some Star Trek level stuff where you could
Yeah.
put the food in the synthesizer.
And this is
Bam, you got
is
cheese.
where we equate the Anunnaki theory in, that we were visited by an advanced civilization. You don't have to even call the Anunnaki aliens. You could just say maybe they were an advanced civilization that were so intelligent they were giving the people of Egypt their knowledge to do what they did. Which then, if you're listening,
His mind.
100%.
if you're listening to this, we sound crazy because there's people that are going to come across this video and be like, "Oh, it's the typical that crowd, the
Listen,
nutcases."
there's still people that believe that it was, the Earth is only like 2,000 years old, and
I wasn't even going to get there. I was going to say, what about the theory where we're the aliens?
I think that's what I was.
That's a good
the
theory,
thought that I
too,
was
though.
having.
Yeah.
I think we are the aliens. We somehow got to a pinnacle of technology, probably just as good as what we are today.
We were super.
Or maybe we
super
thought about
text,
it on a
super
different.
text came here, and then whatever happened, meteor, volcano, flood. Most of that tech was lost. A couple of things survived, repopulated, and then
Yeah, they started taking over and
right, because descendants, right?
taking the civilizations that were built and utilizing it as their own. And the evidence to support that is all these hieroglyphs that are in Egypt. They're a little bit more crude and they're not as precise in terms of like them cutting into the rock or the limestone or whatever, And you'll never really see these hieroglyphs on granite. Granite was so hard to chisel into that the dynasties that we know about in high school when we're learning about them in our textbooks, they would never touch the granite, and just the sheer like perfect precision of some of these granite carvings, like they would carve the owls and certain faces. It was just perfect. They so perfect that there's one specific granite face. I can't even think of the name of it right now, but anyway, they took like a clear coated picture of it, and what they did was they folded it in half, and the face is an exact copy of one side to the other. So when you're looking at the face onwards, it looks a little off. It looks like too perfect. Like that's not how an artist would carve into a stone. Like
symmetrical.
not even like Leonardo da Vinci carved like that. It was.
Well, he did
it was
carve.
almost
He
like-
did
like
carve, but he used different
He
stone.
used marble. Like marble's a little bit more malleable. You still got
Yeah.
Da Vinci or Michelangelo.
Michelangelo. He carved like details on the forearms that people still talk about. But you're talking about granite at the Egyptian time, where
There's a reason why he didn't use granite.
yeah,
Right. And you're also talking
I-
about the 16 to 1800s is the Renaissance. Is that what we're talking about? So versus BC.
Exactly.
Again, 4,000 years.
4,000 years ago.
Minimum.
And then before that, if you want to get even crazier, there's a site called Göbekli Tepe. Most people I've never heard of it. And it's it kind of rivals, and in my opinion is even like, everyone knows Stonehenge, right? Where is Stonehenge?
It's in England. It's an island off. Everybody's always in Scotland. It's in England. It's an island.
why I
off
thought
England.
that too.
No, everybody thinks it's in Scotland. I thought that too originally. But
No, it is
actually
in England. We actually covered Göbekli Tepe.
We did.
But I don't think you were on that one.
I think you were sick.
I might have been.
Yeah, but we did you proud.
10,000 years. I know. I listened to it.
Oh, that's right.
I
You
remember.
were prepping. You were
Yeah.
prepping.
Yeah,
10,000 years before Egypt. Go wrap your brain around that. And they were lifting these same kind of monolithic stones.
and was supposed to be a site for hunter gatherers to like meet that.
Hunter-gatherers are lifting 2, 3, 4 tons and precisely placing
Doing
them
it faster than the
in
Egyptians
concentric
did.
circles.
Did it faster than the Egyptians and did it faster than we've ever done because we haven't done it.
You know why?
And only half that site, or not even half.
I know why they did it. The hunter-gatherers, I know why they did
You
it.
know why they were strong?
Because of mushrooms?
No. They were hunter-gatherers, carnivore diet.
Guy. I knew it.
Well, we hope that you guys enjoyed
Shout out
our
to Liver King right now.
the first video episode of the Say What Again Billy podcast. It took about 3.5 years to get you guys a video podcast, but we hope you guys enjoy. And we're going to have all these videos. Every other week, we're going to do a video. We're going to air it here on the YouTube channel, the Say What Again Billy podcast. And you can head over to swab_podcast on Instagram to make sure that you get all the updates of when we're dropping videos, whether it be a podcast or even another paranormal investigation, which we got a couple of things in the works, especially going into spooky season. And this was all made thanks to Spotify for Podcasters. Now we got to give Spotify for Podcasters love, even though there's a video, because it's going to air wherever you get your podcast from, audio versions, wherever you get your podcast from. And if you don't know about them, they are the free app that allows you to get your podcast idea
Out there.
So if you have a phone, tablet, or computer, head over to Spotify for Podcasters to get started. Joey, this was your subject, man. I'm glad you came today. You like this talk, right?
I can still go on, you know?
It's a good talk. Nick, impeccable Nick's notes.
I knew there's actually
One of these days it'll get so big, we'll just be sitting across from Graham Hancock and he's just going to start spewing facts at us. And we're just going to have a fucking mind.
Go ahead, Joey, look right there. Read that part of the note. Just right there.
Joe.
It just says Joey. It just says Joey, because I know at that point Joey was going to jump in
Yep.
and give his 2 cents.
Now, this is always a good talk. We can literally have a podcast episode about ancient civilizations and just talk about it for hours and hours, because there's a lot of unknown stuff when it comes to ancient civilizations and the advanced buildings they built. Talk about the Mayans, the Egyptians, pyramids in China. We got to cover that.
We didn't even get into Baalbek. I kind of wanted to mention the trillion. I mentioned one stone. The one that was moved in the 17th.
We got tons of episodes and tons of time. We got nothing but time, and we guys hope that you are enjoying the Say What Again Billy podcast. And again, you can listen to the Say What Again Billy podcast wherever you get your podcast from, and now watch it here on YouTube. Everyone, peace out.
See ya.
Thank you for watching.
Yes, sir.